Hello everyone and welcome to our wrap-up of Ohio State's Day, Recruiting National Signing Day. It is in the books and we are going to talk about it with our Ohio State beat reporting team. Doug Lesmerises will join me momentarily, then Ari-Wasserman and Bill-Landis will wrap things up to end a big national signing day for Ohio State. And let's get right to it. Let's bring in Doug Lesmerises. Doug, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well, and Doug, I saw 24/7 Sports has Ohio State ranked something like 6th in the country. I know that's changed sort of as they've added people. Does that sound about right, though?
Yeah, I think it seems to be right. I think they might have flashed into 5th for like 5 minutes before somebody else added another recruit. But you know, they added 2 big names today, and I think the interesting thing about this class is Justin Hilliard, the best linebacker in Ohio, I think is basically the only top 50 kid in this class, the only 5-star kid. I think by the 247 Sports rankings, he's the only 5-star commit in the entire Big Ten. So you're talking about some other schools that are going to have multiple 5-stars, but there are a lot of 4-star really good players, obviously, in this Ohio State class. So I don't think, you know, it's not going to be ranked quite up there with a team like Alabama. This is a class that's fighting to be number 1. But I think it's certainly on the cusp of the top 5 and solidly in the top 10 and solidly the best class in the Big Ten.
And really, Doug, the big thing for Ohio State is they got kids they wanted, and they won some key battles for kids as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they went and got Isaiah Prince out of Maryland. They beat Alabama and Maryland for him. They got KJ Hill. They flipped him from Arkansas. He's an Arkansas kid. You know, I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into this that you got to look at not just the player, but where they got him. You know, they got a kid from St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a powerhouse that Joey Bosa went to in Fort Lauderdale. They got 2 kids from Cass Tech in Detroit. That's the powerhouse in Detroit. They got kids from Virginia and Maryland. That's an important recruiting area in the Big Ten. You know, you have to see that they're expanding the reach, that they're winning battlegrounds areas against, you know, outside their area against other big schools. And so I think from, you know, New Jersey to all the kids in Ohio they spread out that reach. I think they didn't get the full bump from a national championship that they'll get with the 2016 class, but I think they did what they wanted to do.
What are they saying down in Columbus about this class?
You know, they're excited about the depth they added on the offensive line. They have 4 kids who could play offensive tackle in this class, Prince being the 4th. They felt that was an area they needed to address. They added some depth on the defensive line, some bigger guys who can play inside or be a big defensive end. They obviously like the 2 quarterbacks they got, although it makes that room a little crowded. I think KJ Hill, the receiver from Arkansas, was big because, you know, they didn't have a ton of receivers in this class. They had Alex Dump, which was a good get. But to add another receiver was big. But I think they were really excited about the depth on the line. 6 guys on the offensive line, I think 5 guys on the defensive line. And then they added some depth in the secondary because we found out today there's 2 guys on the current roster, and I'm finishing a story on that now. Ron Tanner and Armani Reeves that Urban Meyer says are going to have their careers ended by injury. So they needed to add some depth in the secondary as well.
You mentioned that quarterback room, and quarterback coach Tim Beck, he said that Braxton Miller will absolutely be back this season. There was some speculation he could transfer. Do you believe him? Will Braxton Miller be on this roster?
I'm finishing a story on that, too. And I was the person who asked Tim Beck that, because, you know, you've got to try to pin these guys down whenever you can. And that's the question everybody wants to know. What's up with Braxton Miller? You know, we're at the point right now with Braxton Miller where you ask the question, you get an answer, and then you still sort of don't believe it. So you ask again. You know, like Braxton Miller seemed to indicate at the national championship celebration that he's coming back. His father had told the Columbus Dispatch earlier that he's coming back. You know, Tim Beck, I said, are you certain he will be back? Tim Beck said yes. I asked another assistant coach, and he said, you know, why would Braxton Miller be out there working out at the indoor facility right now if he wasn't coming back? So there's certainly the vibe from here is an idea of, yeah, of course, he's coming back. You know, it's almost like an afterthought, I think, from in the building of what they're projecting. So am I taking it as 1,000% he's back? You know, I guess I'm not going to take it as 1,000% he's back until we see Braxton Miller on the first day of preseason practice in August. But I think it's a pretty good indication.
Now, this roster, when you look at it, Doug, it's about 89 players, so it's 4 over, and there's still some kids that are out there. Maybe I think I saw there were 2 kids that were maybe undecided that Ohio State could add. What are they going to do about this roster size?
Yeah, it's another story I'm working on. That's really important to me. I think you have to keep tabs on the roster management of the school. I think you owe it to the players on the team to make sure that kids aren't being run off. And I'm not saying that at all with Ohio State right now, but there are numbers questions. I was just going over it with somebody again today. I had them at 91 with 64 guys on the roster in a 27-man class when I asked Urban Meyer about it today. That's when he mentioned Ron Tanner. He mentioned Armani Reeves, and unfortunately, linebacker Devin Bogard, who's a great kid, a Glenville grad I've written about a lot, 3 ACL tears. He says he's not going to be back. So that gets them to 88. Now, Urban Meyer said, we're fine, we're at 85 or 86. That's not the math that I have right now. And so, they got to get to 85 by August. So the proof will be in the pudding. We'll see how they get there, what happens. There certainly could be things that we don't know yet. That the coaches do know, but, you'll see who ends up being the guys that aren't here and what the reasons are that are given for why they're not here, and then you'll be able to tell sort of what happened. But at the moment, in my mind, there's 3 more roster spots that need to be taken care of.
Doug, you look at the 2 quarterbacks they've added, Torrance Gibson, Joey Burrow, of course, Burrow out of Athens. Which of these 2 guys do you get a sense at all that maybe they like better, or do they like one better than the other?
I think it was a perfect 1-2 combination of how you want to go about recruiting quarterbacks. And I think they had missed in the last couple of years, they had not done it right, and they got stuck a little bit. When they had chased national guys, missed on them, and then they didn't have anybody, and they ended up reaching late in the class. This time, they locked down an in-state kid who wanted to be here, who people had questions about, and Joey Burrow as a 3-star kid. And then Joey Burrow goes out and has an absolutely tremendous senior year and completely validates his Ohio State offer. In the meantime, they kept chasing Torrance Gibson, who's a kid who wants to be a quarterback, will get a shot to be a quarterback here for sure. They beat Auburn. They beat a lot of Southern schools to get him, and they wind up with both. The thing that I think, this is what I think. Absolutely, Torrance Gibson's will get a chance to be a quarterback here. He's going to have J.T. Barrett in front of him. He's going to have Joey Burrow in his class. I don't think Torrance Gibson will ever be a backup quarterback here. I think he'll get every chance to win the starting job, but he's too good of an athlete to be the backup. So if he does not beat out Joey Burrow or J.T. Barrett or whomever else is going to be here, because they're going to recruit guys behind him, then I think you'll see Torrance Gibson play another position, because I think it would be silly to waste him as your 2nd or 3rd quarterback. But I think he will get every chance to do it, and I think in a couple years from now, the Torrance Gibson-Joey Burrow battle, plus the kid they bring in, next year or the year after, is going to be a great quarterback battle of Ohio State.
All right, so let's get to that question before I let you go. The starting quarterback in 2015 is as big a question mark, but I'm going to ask you this. The starting quarterback for Ohio State in 2016 will be who?
I think it's 100% J.T. Barrett. I will be flabbergasted if it's not. I think the only reason it wouldn't be J.T. Barrett is because of injury or something that we don't foresee. But, J.T. Barrett would be a redshirt junior, a 4th-year junior at that point. Whether he's a starting quarterback next year or not, he would have a year of starting under his belt. He's not going to be gone for the NFL or anything. He gives you everything you want from a quarterback as a leader, as a teammate. He showed he could run the offense. And so Joey Burrow or Torrance Gibson or somebody like that is not going to beat out Joey Burrow. It's not going to beat out J.T. Barrett for 2015. 2017 will be another issue, but they got a kid named Danny Clark who's going to be in the 2017 class, who's a big-time quarterback recruit. But 2016, for sure, J.T. Barrett.
All right, Doug Lesmerises, one of our Ohio State beat reporters, joining us here to wrap up the day for recruiting for Ohio State. Doug, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, so we will continue our show with Ari-Wasserman, and then Bill-Landis will come on as well. I'm looking at it right now. 24/7 Sports has Ohio State sitting at 6th in the nation for their recruiting class. Tennessee is 4th, LSU is 5th, Florida State is at 3rd, USC is at 2nd. I think they just flip-flopped USC and Florida State, actually. And then Alabama is sitting at number 1 in the country. So Ohio State, as I mentioned, 24/7 Sports has them at number 6. To talk about their day, we're going to bring in another member of our Ohio State reporting team, Ari-Wasserman, joining us. Ari, how are you?
Well, how are you?
I'm doing well. Does number 6 sound about right?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, coming into the day, there were 7. They picked up a few commits here that they didn't know they were going to have this morning. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the difference between number 6 and number 3 is probably pretty trivial. So, you know, having it in the top 10 and putting together a class of 27 guys, most of which are highly rated, is a very successful day. And it's basically just becoming an automatic thing here in Columbus.
Yeah, you mentioned they're bringing in a class with a lot of guys. Their roster is overfilled at the moment. Ari, how do you think that the roster is going to play out between now and August?
Well, Doug asked him about that today. Asked Urban about that, and right now, if you look at the math, Ohio State's on pace to have 91 players. It's obviously 6 more than the allotted 85 scholarship limit. Mentioned that Ron Tanner and a few other players are no longer going to be on the team next year because of injury, and there's more to that to sort out. So I don't know exactly which players are going to be moving on or what's going to be different, but it is a fact that some more changes are going to have to be ahead over the summer for them to make that roster work.
Obviously, the big names, Torrance Gibson, after he kind of went on his post-commitment tour, deciding to stay with Ohio State. Mike Weber out of Cass Tech choosing Ohio State as well. What other big names stand out to you in this group?
You know, the biggest name in the class is Justin Hilliard. He's a 5-star linebacker from Cincinnati who kind of got everything going for Ohio State in July. They weren't recruiting so hot, you know, at the time, and then he committed on the same day as his good friend Jay Sean Cornell from Minnesota. The next thing you know, Ohio State's back in the running for a top 5 class. So him and, of course, Jerome Baker from the Cleveland area, Benedictine, another versatile athlete that really can make strides for Ohio State in the next few years. So those are 2 really good linebackers at a position to need.
Hey, Jerome Baker, obviously from Benedictine, you mentioned him. He also played running back here, but he's pretty much going to be a linebacker at Ohio State. There's no chance that he ends up in the backfield offensively.
I never want to say there's no chance because Ohio State's such a interesting place, and you never know. But you know, I think the versatility of being able to play both those positions will give him a chance to, you know, do himself a favor to maybe see a new role because of, you know, having the ability to run means that you can run on special teams, and you're probably a faster, more athletic linebacker. So Ohio State's best defensive player maybe was Darren Lee this year, and he was an outside linebacker who came to Ohio State as a quarterback. So you never know exactly how they're going to tinker with guys, but I think right now you're right. I think Jerome Baker stays at linebacker.
KJ Hill, a guy that they picked up today, maybe not expected when they woke up this morning. They weren't sure what he was going to do. What does he bring to this team?
You know, I think he brings them more options at least because they've got one receiver right now, and Alex Stump from Cleveland, and you know, he's kind of a different type of player. He's a little bit bigger. He's 6'2", 6'1", I think 189 pounds. You know, and it just gives Ohio State more options now that they're losing 2 starters from last year's team in Devin Smith and Evan Spencer. So, you know, it's really hard to tell which players are going to come in and have an instant impact and which ones are going to take a few years, if ever. But you know, both of those guys KJ Hill is, I think, is certainly the most valuable pickup on National Signing Day because of the need that he fills.
Ohio State's in an interesting position, Ari, because they bring back a lot of players from that national championship team. They don't have a lot of slots that need to get filled, but when you look at this recruiting class, is there a guy that you think can have an immediate impact and help this team try to win that back-to-back national championship?
You know, it's really hard to tell because, you know, it's a new year, but everybody forgets how many awesome players like these were on last year's class who redshirted. You know, guys like Sam Hubbard, who was basically Jerome Baker last year. He didn't even play. So to me, I really have a hard time thinking like, wow, this guy's so good that, you know, unless you're like a Joey Bosa where it's clear and it's obvious that you're a freak and better than everybody, you know, it's hard to kind of pick which guy I think is going to make an instant impact. If I had to guess, probably I would go with a guy like Jerome Baker, you know, on special teams at least because he is so fast and so big and his body's so advanced for his age.
All right, before I let you go, I want to ask you one quick fill in the blank here. The best player from this class will be blank.
It's
Can I say Joey Burrow? Is that crazy? I think that Ohio State has a plethora of quarterbacks, but I think in a few years there's a chance that Joey Burrow, the way that they, we're talking about him, could be the next big surprise at quarterback for Ohio State. He has all the tools and all the necessity, the size. He can run. He's got a great arm. If he comes in and adapts to the system well, I think he'll be able to run Urban's offense quite well. So that's going to be my quick guess.
We won't hold you to that. It's a long time before we get an actual answer to that question. Thanks for the time, Ari.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, Ari-Wasserman joining us. Doug Lesmerises joined us earlier. We're going to bring in Bill-Landis momentarily to wrap up the day, National Signing Day for Ohio State. Again, I mentioned Ohio State from 24/7 Sports. They are ranked 6th this year. Kind of rounding out that top 10, I gave you the teams ahead of Ohio State. UCLA in at 7, Clemson in at 8, Auburn in at 9, and then Georgia at 10. And they actually dropped a good ways today on 24/7 Sports. They've dropped 4 spots, and UCLA, a big riser, up 12 spots in 24/7 Sports top 10 recruiting classes. So Ohio State, number 6 according to 24/7 Sports, and this is a team that Urban Meyer has said repeatedly he didn't think they were this was the year for them to win a national championship. It was a little bit of a surprise that they got a chance to do it, and then that they actually did it, especially with Cardale Jones stepping in and taking over. So this is a team that's bringing back a lot of talent. This was kind of the year Urban Meyer had targeted for a national championship. It'll be interesting to see if any of these young guys step in and help them out. Let's go ahead and bring in the third part of our Ohio State reporting team. Bill-Landis joining us. Bill, how are you?
Doing well. It's been a long day, but I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I've mentioned it, 24/7 has Ohio State at number 6. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I think so. We were looking at some things. We're going to have stuff later about how Ohio State ranks in the Big Ten and nationally. And it's interesting. Ohio State is 6th, and they only brought in 1 5-star guy. And you look at the teams ahead of them, the teams in the SEC. I think there was 35 5-stars in 247, and 18 of them ended up in the SEC. And only 1 ended up in the Big Ten. So for Ohio State to have a class ranked that high and not have players who I guess are considered the elite of the elite, other than Justin Hilliard, I think speaks to the depth of the class. So I think they're where they should be, and I think it's a good sign for Ohio State because that means they brought in guys who are high caliber, maybe not the best of the best as it's determined by the people who run their sites, but guys who are all pretty similar in their skill set and guys who are certainly good football players.
Who do you like the best in this class?
Oh, man. It's tough to say because the vast majority I haven't seen. So I guess I'll go with a guy I'm familiar with, Jerome Baker from Cleveland, just because I've talked to him a bunch and I know what he's capable of. He's a guy I think that can play. He can play on both sides of the ball, really. It'll be interesting to see what Ohio State does with him. I think they like him a linebacker, and he likes to play linebacker. But if there's ever a situation where he had to play running back, I think he could play it and make that transition pretty seamlessly. But he's just, he's a freak athlete, to put it bluntly. He's got great size. I think body-wise, he's already pretty set to play in college now if he wants to contribute as a freshman. So I think he's a guy that can make an impact early on and a guy who I'm pretty high on.
Now we know Mike Weber kind of strung this thing out a little bit, finally decided on Ohio State, but a couple guys earlier before Mike Weber made decisions that some folks weren't so sure about. KJ Hill, Isaiah Prince, how big was it for Ohio State to add those 2 guys to this group?
Huge. I'll start with KJ Hill first. He was big because really they need receivers. They lost Evan Smith, they lost Evan Spencer. They have some guys in previous classes and some younger guys who are coming back, but they need depth at that position. And KJ Hill is a guy who we were just talking with Zach Smith, the receivers coach, and he was raving about KJ Hill, his speed, his ability to do things with the ball. He said he can play outside, he can play inside, he can play H-back, so he's a really versatile guy. And Isaiah Prince is a guy who you may not see on the field for a couple of years because he's an offensive lineman, and it typically takes some time for those guys to adjust and adapt. But he adds great depth to the offensive line, something they need. They brought in 11 offensive linemen now in the last 2 recruiting classes, which is absurd when you throw on the top of that they have 4 starters back from last year. But a big part of Prince's signature, too, is that they went into the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, a recruiting hotbed that a lot of teams really rely on. And they got Prince and 2 other guys from that area that are going to be huge for the program. And it's kind of a stepping stone for Ohio State to get into that area even more because they had guys in 2016 who they're really high on, who they're hoping now they have a foot in the door to get those guys in here.
All right, Bill, fill in this blank for me. The biggest surprise in this class for Ohio State is who?
The biggest surprise, I mean, for me personally, I would say it's Torrance Gibson, because I thought there was a shot that he would leave with the quarterback situation here and the fact that they had Joe Burrow in, who was kind of building up a profile. I thought there was a shot that he might go somewhere else where it would be a little easier for him to get on the field quicker.
One more, speaking of Gibson. We know that the quarterback situation this season is going to be kind of murky between Cardale Jones, J.T. Barrett, and Braxton Miller. Looking ahead to 2016, who do you think the starting quarterback will be that year?
I think it's J.T. Barrett. I think regardless of what happens next season, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm not even going to start to try to predict that now. But if you mean Braxton is gone, Cardale, I would imagine, regardless of what happens this year, is gone. He'll be a 60-year senior if he comes back, really. So I think that year is JT's, barring any sort of setback. I mean, Torrance Gibson by then you think would be ready. Joe Burrow will certainly be ready by then too. But I think just the way things have gone and how JT played, that even if for some reason he gets beat out and it's not his job in 2015, it's his to lose in 2016.
Tim Beck said today that he thinks Braxton will absolutely be back this season. Do you believe him?
Yeah, that was the most definitive answer we've gotten all year. Urban Meyer has kind of not ducked it, but I just don't think he was really sure. I don't know if they sat down and had the real conversation about it. But Tim Beck, he seemed pretty certain about it. So I mean, this is our first time talking with Tim Beck, but I'd imagine he'd be straight with us. So if he says with that much confidence that Braxton's coming back, I don't really have any reason to not believe him.
All right, I haven't actually had a chance to ask anyone this yet. This was kind of our first look at the Urban Meyer-Jim Harbaugh recruiting battle. Now, obviously, Jim Harbaugh came in late, coming from the NFL. How do you think this battle's going to play out over the next few years? Has Urban Meyer kind of dug in enough in Michigan and dug in enough in those competitive areas to keep winning this battle, or can Jim Harbaugh get some of that territory back?
I think Harbaugh can certainly get some of that territory back, and I think that's going to be priority one for 2016 and beyond. Because I can't imagine he's very happy that the best player in Michigan went to Ohio State, basically because Harbaugh was late due to no fault of his own getting in on Mike Weber, so Mike Weber walks. And now he's got to answer questions as to why the best running back in Michigan is going to be playing for Ohio State for the next 4 years. So I think Harbaugh definitely is the kind of recruiter who can get Michigan back into a place like Cass Tech or anywhere else in his own state very quickly, and Urban Meyer knows that. I think he spoke today about how they're always keeping tabs on Michigan. He said it's the one team they actually pay attention to when they're in the recruiting process. So I think we're looking at a pretty intriguing battle here for however long these two guys are, Ohio State and Michigan.
It's going to be fun. Just another layer to the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. Bill, thanks for the time.
Thanks, man.
All right, that'll do it for our wrap-up of National Signing Day, Ohio State's class of 2015. Thanks to Doug Lesmerises, ari-wasserman, and Bill Landis. If you missed any of the show, we'll have a live archive up at cleveland.com/OSU. I guess it won't be a live archive. I don't know how that would work. It'll just be an archive. Again, thanks for watching. I'm Dan Labbe.